Yeah, I've been a couple of years, I think.
Right, and actually pass from.
I try to be clear on there with it.
Yeah.
Try not to let out stuff come into the.
Yeah.
Mặt sao tôi tập nấu ép nấu
Is it okay? Convenience?
Yes, thank you very much. You're right. Yes.
Okay. It's all good.
Thank you for your You can sit down and have you pass to maybe speaks good English and I will
Câu cho mẹ cho cô nên cũng sống này.
Đó là chẳng mấy chị ăn cho nó có baby thank you. A lot of people here we make discussions. This is the first meeting in life. So when they come in, it's happy to see you. I know it's so nice to see you. Maybe we're about to start, so yeah. So I think we can start now. Yeah. We can start, otherwise it will just become a photo session.
Is it okay for broadcasting live?
Sorry?
Is it okay for live?
We're very glad to meet everyone here. Some friends we know from Zoom, quite a few, and many of you were meeting for the first time. Is it? See, because two very close to each other, that's why. Yes.
One might need to be abusive.
Very close.
Another one to turn off. Turn off microphone, yeah.
Yeah. I think one.
Sorry, we cannot hear on Zoom. You need to have. I'm sorry, because someone turned off. So we cannot hear anything. We need to have one microphone opened. Tâm Châu ơi, Tâm Châu. Hãy phải mở lại. Vừa nãy bạn kia bạn ấy tắt mất mic cho nên là không nghe được. Can you call Tâm Châu? Someone?
We'll just try it.
We just heard. Can you speak again? Try to speak again.
When I turn on the microphone, you can hear me, right?
Yes, now.
But
now I can hear.
but there's no amplification within the room here, so they want to use the separate microphone for the benefit of the people who are here.
Okay.
Whereas I can try leaving this microphone on as well, but I think it'll be okay. Try that. Can I just begin by making a general comment that I think the Buddha's teaching can be summarized as being a description of life as it truly is at the present moment. Life as it truly is at the present moment. The reality of that is what the Buddha taught. And the reason he taught about the present moment is that only what is appearing at the present moment can be directly known. If it's not something that's appearing at the present moment, it can't be directly known, it can only be thought about. The things that can be directly known at the present moment are the things that are real and have a characteristic. So, for example, an idea is not a reality, it's just a concept. It cannot be directly known, it doesn't arise and fall away, it has no characteristic. It is a product of the mind, of thinking. And so the development of the path taught by the Buddha is the development of understanding things that are real at the present moment. Those things are sometimes called dhammas or sankhara dhammas. Just pausing while something is done with the and in order to understand the deepest sense of the Buddha's teaching, one needs to consider what are the realities about which he taught that he said can be understood. In fact, he said they need to be understood if there is to be the development of understanding and the path to enlightenment. So the present moment for all of us is comprises much the same realities, doesn't it? There is seeing and hearing and thinking about what has been seen and heard in particular. But if we consider on a moment-to-moment basis, we think we see people and things, and we think we hear voices, words, meaning, and information. But the reality is that there must first, before there can be, for example, in the case of hearing, any idea of words and meaning, there has to be the experiencing of sound by the hearing consciousness. And hearing consciousness experiences sound. At that moment, does the hearing consciousness itself know anything about the sound that's been experienced? Does it know it's someone speaking? No, it doesn't. It only experiences sound at that moment. And it's the thinking that follows after that identifies the source of the sound and if it has meaning and so forth. So we begin to understand that the actual realities of the present moment are not what we take them to be. They are these fundamental dhammas, conditioned realities that are arising and falling away all the time, according to the Buddha, arising and falling away so rapidly that they appear to be continuous and cannot be known on a moment-to-moment basis. But still, their general characteristic can be known. The other general remark I'd like to make is that the Buddha explained in detail, not just the area I've covered, but anything else about the present moment that there is to be understood. And he didn't actually set out a path or a kind of practice for understanding things as they are. He explained how they are and said it's the understanding of this that is the development of the path. And so we need to consider how there can be the development of that understanding and whether there is a role for practice in that. if it wasn't explained by the Buddha. Perhaps some of you might have the idea that the Buddha explained kinds of practice. People often say, well, the Buddha attained jhana before his enlightenment. So doesn't this mean that we should attain jhana, or at least develop samatha as well? But the question is not what he did, but what he taught. And the question is whether he taught that the development of jhana, of samatha, was a necessary part of the development of the path, or whether his teachings about jhana were addressed to those who were already developing samatha to a very high degree, and who was explaining how that development could go in parallel with the development of insight, because it's the development of insight or understanding that is the key feature of his teaching. Okay, so I've made a few comments. Pause for a minute. We're not hearing you. And the reason is that my microphone, I've got to turn off this.
You hear me at home now? The comments.
Yeah, I
Yes.
guess last time too.
Okay, so I'll carry on and let you coordinate with Tanjaro. So the core of the teachings is no one here, no one that can see, no one that can hear, no one who can do anything. And utter doesn't just mean self, Jonathan, Sarah, and so on. Something there when there's the idea that it's a cup or a computer that is seen. This is the idea of something of utter ditty. Because in truth, what is seen? Is it a computer? Is it people in the room? Or is it just visible object that is seen now? Is it my voice? Are they the words that I heard? or is it just sound that is heard? So we live in the world of concepts and ideas. We know when we wake up in the morning when we've been dreaming that it wasn't real, it's just a dream. But actually there is dreaming all day too, in between the sense thought processes. It's living in a dream, thinking about people, things, computers, cups of tea, taking them for being real, for being something, but actually they're just the ideas about what has been seen and heard. So life is just in a moment now, different dhammas that experience the object, which we call namas, and different dhammas that don't experience anything, which we call rupas, arising and falling away. And as I mentioned, the point of this is for the letting go of the idea of self, of something there. Fortunately for those that don't, it's not working. We can hear. So does anyone have any question or anything they have different understanding about, anything they would like to bring up? And for any newcomers, however basic, is fine. Yes, please go ahead.
As I know that we are living in a conventional truth because of daily living, that everywhere it will be as conventional truth. So my question is, because you're just talking about the present moment, it has the concept and the reality. So my question is, how do we start and to practice to understanding the reality?
Okay, very good question. So for those who are new, what is being pointed to is there are two kinds of truths. There are the conventional truths. This is a table, this is a cup, Jonathan, Sarah. This is true conventionally. Everyone knows what we're talking about. But we don't need a Buddha's wisdom to tell us this is a table, this is a computer. Everyone knows because this is what we've learned since we were young. The Buddha's wisdom was enlightened to the absolute realities that you refer to. So these are the conventional realities, but the absolute realities are what I was just mentioning. Just here and now, just sound that is heard for a moment and gone. Seeing just sees what is visible, not a cup. When you say we live in the conventional truth, actually life just exists of the absolute realities, but we think about the conventional truths and we take the conventional truths for being real. If we haven't ever heard the Buddha's teachings, we will have no idea that what is seen is not a cup, not a table, just visible object. So the Buddha taught the absolute truth of what is here and now. So of course we still talk about Jonathan, Sarah, the spring breeze and so on, but with understanding that these are just concepts or conventional terms. So life goes on as usual. We go to the market, we speak to our friends, we do our errands using different ideas, but with more and more understanding of what the absolute truths are. The Buddha knew the names of all the bhikkhus, or all the people he spoke to. He knew which is his cup, which is the other's cup. but no misunderstanding about what the absolute truth is. So it's not about a change in the outer appearance or the language we use, but a development of understanding. And you asked, how does it start, or how does the practice start? We think of, this is a point Jonathan mentioned at the beginning, we think of I following a practice, doing something, because we're so used to it. We think if we want to learn to drive, these are the steps we follow, and we need to practice these steps again and again. Or if we learn to cook Vietnamese or Cambodian food, we need to follow the instructions and learn by practicing what to do. But the absolute truth is, as we know, no one to do anything, no one to practice. So if we think I should start and I should practice, it's missing the point that each Dharma that arises is conditioned. No one to do anything, no practice to be followed. I think this was a point we were discussing it yesterday on the Zoom, Susan, because the seeing now arises by conditions. If there has been the careful considering and reflecting on what the Buddha taught about dharmas as anatta, understanding can arise, but not by I practicing understanding or trying to make it arise or selecting an object to be understood, because that is all the wrong path led by the idea of I doing something, I practicing. So it's the opposite of our conventional idea about what I should do. And when one would like to have more awareness or more understanding, it's just clinging to I, clinging to being wiser, clinging to having more kindness, to being a good person. It's not the letting go of the burden of self. And it is the understanding that leads to all kinds of goodness. Less clinging to I, being this way or that way. For example, often people would like to follow a practice of loving kindness or metta, so they may quote or chant or sit in a quiet place. But what about just being kind and friendly to those around when there's an opportunity? So understanding can understand the difference between moments of kindness, care for the others, as opposed to attachment, just liking them because they are our particular friends or our family members that we want to help. Like the care for our baby, what about the care for others too? So gradually, through understanding, there can be a little more understanding of what is true now. Seeing, hearing, kindness, clinging, different dharmas, and in truth, none of them belong to me. It's not my kindness, it's not my understanding, it's not my clinging. We're just dharmas arising and falling away. So nothing to be done, no practice to be followed. But we can see that without considering carefully, reflecting deeply, there's no way to understand what is meant about different dharmas arising and falling away in the life now. So as soon as there's trying to understand, trying to be aware, then it's clinging again. But that clinging can be known to. Does that answer the question?
Yes, because keep misunderstanding that we try. So actually we put something in there, we try. Because to reach there, everyone is thinking that I try. As long as I'm trying, it will be there. Very good. I'm trying.
Yes, well, there's the idea of I all the time, a lot of the time, but all these funny ideas don't get eradicated until final enlightenment. So we need to get used to the fact that there will be the idea of I. doesn't mean that there can't be the development of awareness and understanding. I think the problem is not so much the thought of I, but the problem is the idea that by making an effort, by trying to have understanding, that is what will help the development of understanding. According to the Buddha's teaching, understanding, like all the other realities of life, is a conditioned reality. It arises by conditions. It happens not because we have control over whether there's understanding or not, but because if and when there are the right conditions it arises. And those conditions, as explained by the Buddha, do not include our will, our wish to have more understanding. So wishing and trying and hoping, of course, are not conditions for the arising, the natural occurring of awareness and understanding. What are the conditions for that? As explained by the Buddha, the factors that he said are necessary, the requisite factors are will, paying close attention to the explanation he has given of the reality of life at this moment, and reflecting on that. So rather than trying to have more awareness or understanding, there should be the appreciation that hearing a correct description of the reality of the present moment is what's important. And because we all here have an interest in coming to a better understanding of life, that's what unites us, that's what we will share in common here. There will naturally be the reflection on and consideration of that description as we go about our daily life. Not because we are sitting and trying to understand it, but because what we've heard has triggered our interest to reflect on it. And these are the things that may condition moments of awareness and understanding. So it requires, of course, we can appreciate that such moments of awareness and understanding will not necessarily come as frequently and as strongly as we would wish. So there needs to be patience. If one is confident that those are the factors that support the development of understanding, as explained by the Buddha, then there's no need to try to hasten things along by undertaking a practice that is basically, as you said, me wishing and trying to do that. But the problem is not the idea of I, because that is with us all, will be with us for a long time. But it's having the right understanding, the appreciation of what are the right factors.
Rick, first time you've been hearing this, you haven't joined any Zooms before. Do you have any questions or comments?
Not right now, but if something comes up,
Yes, please. Just remind me of your name.
Suchi. Suchi là my husband.
Oh.
It's interesting to have a discussion today. My question is, I want to know your experience. I think your background is not Buddhist. This is my thinking. But I want to know what can bring you to this level that you can understand the real teaching of the Buddha. Yeah, I have listened your discussion for a long time, and I just want to know your experience. Sometimes you share your experience can open the gate for us to start.
I'll say a little bit.
Sorry, Sarah, can you just put this on?
So when I was young, I was brought up in a very strongly Christian family. I was always the child and the teenager who would say, well, how do you know there's a God, or why is this? And so I was always questioning quite a lot. And I trained as a psychologist because I was interested to understand more about how the mind worked. But many questions were not answered, like why are identical twins so different at birth, and all these kinds of simple questions. And I studied a lot about different religions, but it was the Buddhist teachings that were of interest to me, and especially a book I read which mentioned about no self, no soul, no God, just different realities. It made sense to me, and I also appreciated the fact it's not a faith system, it's not something to believe, but what can be proved and tested at this moment. It can be tested out that there is seeing now, and that seeing doesn't see pictures, it just sees what is visible. And then there is a lot of thinking about it. I traveled when I was very young overland to India from England, and I spent 2 years in India and Sri Lanka living in temples. I followed a very strict meditation practice. I lived as a nun in Sri Lanka, so I understand about practices and meditation and taking it very seriously. And I was fortunate, I was really young, I was only 21, but I was very fortunate, actually, thanks to Jonathan, to listen to some very bad quality cassettes of Ajahn Suchin speaking. And at that time, I'd actually read quite a lot of the Tipitaka, but she was speaking and talking about now, hearing a sound, immediately thinking of the voices, the cars in the street, the people beating the drums. But it's all a story, it's all a dream, because it's just sound that's heard. No self that can do anything. I instantly dropped my meditation practice like overnight and never had any interest again. So even though the cassette was part Pali, part Thai, it was interesting, and I started to read a lot more, and I went back to England to help my family who were having a lot of trouble, and went back to work as a psychologist and social worker, and kept in touch. Jonathan was living in Thailand at the time. He sent me a lot of cassettes, and I joined Ajahn Suchin on trips in Sri Lanka and in other places. So, and that's actually how I know Jonathan, through we both studying with her. And so we both studied with her for over 50 years. We've been very, very fortunate, and I never had any interest in practicing or doing something because it made so much sense to me. All the answers I'd ever had as a youngster in England or as a psychology student were answered one by one. The Buddha has answers for every question, because there are just different realities arising and falling and weighing out. No self can ever be found. So it's a great treasure for those of you who come from Vietnamese or Cambodian background, fortunate to have had access to the Buddha's teachings. But the wrong view of self is just the same, no matter in England, Australia, Vietnam, Cambodia. We spent a lot of time in Vietnam, we've been 20, 30 times helping to give talks, hold discussions, different language, but the ideas are just the same. So everyone has to listen and consider, and it just depends on the interest, whether there's an interest to understand about the truth now or not. One can't, like often people say, how can I help my family friends? They don't want to listen. If there's no interest, you can't make someone interest. Or if you're helping someone at the hospital, it depends whether there is the interest to listen and consider and reflect. For me, when I used to work in psychiatric centres, and any help I gave, from my point of view, is from the understanding of Buddhism. But you don't have to use special words, or it's not about the language, the terms, but the understanding of the truth now, which is the best medicine, the best healing for in any circumstance.
So let me ask you, where does any interest or skill or learning come from?
Again, please.
Yes. Where does, you asked about how we came to be interested and have some familiarity with the Buddha's teaching. So where does but regardless of whether it's in the Dhamma or elsewhere, where does an interest or familiarity or skill come from?
My question of you.
How does it come to be?
This one.
Suppose someone is
Actually, I really don't know where it's from, because in my life I have many purposes to become. Like when I was young, I wanted to be a singer, to be a artist, but when the time passed by, everything changed and I like something more. So it just happened through the time that I passed by.
And where do those likes, there's something more that you liked, how does that come to be?
I think the main point is not depend on any particular, it just happened because of their condition.
Because of
Its condition.
its condition. Well, that's exactly right. So if one has an interest in this lifetime in something, then it must have developed previously in a previous lifetime, let's say. So we call these accumulated tendencies. So we all have different accumulated tendencies, which account for our interest in different things, our level of skill in different things. Someone who is a skilled musician, for example, it's not because they earned it all just in this lifetime, it's because of having studied it previously and become competent in the past. So I think this is the real answer to your question, because what happened in this lifetime in terms of place of birth, education, family, where one came across the Dhamma, it's all but just by conditions, right? But the important thing is that there must have been the interest there, because other people have the opportunity to hear the Dhamma, but they don't follow up at all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, we can give the different stories, and the story would be different. Everyone has a different, but in truth, they're just different moments of interest, different moments of exploring further or not. So it just depends on the habit, the accumulations, when there's an opportunity to listen, whether it makes sense or not.
Yes.
After my experience, I thought, oh, I can share these cassettes with different people. Everyone will find it so interesting. But other people didn't find it interesting. So when I went home, I thought, oh, my family would like to hear about this. No interest. So it just depends on the habit and interest.
Yeah.
And we know this develops from life to life.
Mhm.
We know that the clinging now to a particular taste conditions more clinging to that taste. So understanding also accumulates.
I raised this question because I read many sutta that said by the Buddha. Sometimes he explained about the reality, but he also talked about someone life, the last existence, and then become something. But at last, he made the conclusion and explained to the reality. So. To me, I also have the start point. Yeah, but not everyone like that. But just take an example sometimes.
And the main point is that we give these examples, but the main point is there is no one.
That's
So we think it's Ananda or Sariputa's story, but in truth, there are just different dhammas arising and falling away. In the commentary to one sutta about the snake, he talks about handling the snake in the wrong way. So if one reads the suttas in the wrong way, it's like taking the snake in the wrong way. One thinks it's just about different people, but in fact, they're about different realities. And if one studies the Abhidhamma in the wrong way and tries to learn and memorize every term and detail, it can lead to madness, just trying to work out what are the different causes of different karma results and so on. So it has to come back to the understanding of dhammas, not this person or that person.
Yeah, and the understanding also arises because of the condition as well. Like Buddha also recommend all of us to associate with the vice or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I referred to. That's what I had in mind when I referred to hearing the Buddha's description of the reality of the present moment, of life at the present moment. And one hears that from another person. Or it can be by reading, of course, but mostly it will be from personal communication with other person or people who share one's interest in understanding the Buddha's teaching. And that person, anyone who is able to help one understand the Dhamma is the good friend for that particular moment or instance. So there were four factors that the Buddha mentioned: association, friend, hearing the true Dhamma, reflection on what has been heard, and then
Bluetooth disconnected. Bluetooth connecting. Please wait.
And it is Dhamma.
the fourth one is the actual moments of awareness and understanding.
Who can control what is?
No,
Who can control what is?
Disconnected.
not at all.
And stop aversion or unpleasant feeling if you hear a strong noise. That's by conditions, yes.
Condition Dhamma.
Thank you for this session. I'm so happy to hear what you were both talking about. I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Bluetooth disconnected. Bluetooth connecting. Please wait.
I so can resonate with you, Sarah, about listening to cassettes. I've been listening to, I follow my teacher, as most of the Cambodian people here, know of him, Dr. Sawong, for over 20 years, and he's the student of Ajahn Sujin. Anyway, my
Sorry,
question.
who was it?
Dr. Sawong.
Swan. We met him in Cambodia a long time ago, about 25 years
I
ago.
only listened to him since, many years ago.
Yes, we know.
I don't understand Thai, so I can't listen to Ajahn Thai. I mean, Ajahn Sujin.
But you can listen in English.
Yes, I want to ask you, and it's all about accumulative interests and understanding. So hence here you are, and Jonathan, and here some of us, and so many other people are here. Maybe I misunderstood about evidence, because I mean, science, they're talking about evidence. I mean, they see stuff in the microscope. We can't show, but from what you're saying, evidence, maybe you're referring to different evidence as opposed to the scientific evidence.
I don't think we've mentioned evidence. What science teaches is actually about ideas, concepts, no understanding of seeing now, no understanding of thinking, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling. So it's not the understanding of the truth. When we talk about accumulated habits, we can just discuss a little bit more about, there are many different conditions for different realities, different dharmas to arise now. Everyone has heard about karma, for example. So seeing now, hearing now are results of karma. They're not cause, they're results. But the liking, the disliking, the attachment, the understanding, these are not results of karma, these are accumulated habits. So there is another condition which you may have heard about, which is a very wide condition, which is a natural support, natural dependent support condition. In Pali, Pakatu Upanisya Pachya. And this is a condition by which attachment arises now. Anger may suddenly arise, may hear a harsh sound and suddenly there may be anger unexpectedly, or understanding may unexpectedly arise now or in the marketplace. These are all by this condition, which conditions the different habits, the different accumulated tendencies.
Tendencies.
No, when you said that you had so many questions, and then you heard Ajahn Sujin, and that answered your question because about hearing.
It out.
Yes, about the hearing, it just sound.
Yes.
It's not the sound of a car,
Right.
because the ear only pick up the sound. There is no description of the sound. It's the next step of the mind that translates the sound to a conventional name. But you said that when you were quite young, you understood that. I mean, it's a really difficult, deeper level for just anybody to understand. But you gathered that there is evidence that tested that teaching.
So this is understanding. So understanding understands what is true, little by little. Like now, we're discussing about the truth the Buddha taught, all the wise considering. Like if I ask you, what is touch now? Can it be tested out? What is touch now? What is touched at this moment?
It's just a feeling. It's either soft or hard.
It's soft or hard, or maybe
Or hot or cold.
Cold, right. It can be tested, it can be proved right now whether this is true.
Is that what you mean?
Close one's eyes. can a cup be touched? No, it can only be thought about. So the point is the Buddha's teachings are not to just believe because one is told by a famous teacher or bhikkhu that there is a God or a soul or self that can control life, but test out what is true at this moment. So it's not about the words, it's not about the language, but what can actually be tested and
Verified.
what can be verified. Yes.
Thank you.
Not under a microscope, but by understanding.
That's it. You hit it on the nail. I got it now. Thank you.
But Sarah, isn't understanding coming through experiences? That's all.
No, say it again so people can. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, isn't that understanding is coming from experiences?
What do you mean by experiences? Because no matter whether one's heard the Buddha's teachings or not, there are experiences in life. Whether one's, even those who have never heard the Buddha's teachings are still seeing, hearing, thinking, liking, disliking, experiences that we call driving a car, falling down.
Yes.
But however many experiences in life, usually there's no understanding if there hasn't been hearing and careful considering about what life really is now. So it has to be the experience of understanding that conditions more understanding.
I'm a bit confused because you said you have to touch it and then you feel it's hot or it's cold, and then you know for yourself. It's not through thought. When you close your eyes, you don't know that. You only conceptual thinking. But when you touch it, actually you experience it, right? Through touch, even though it's conventional truth, it's not the ultimate truth. That's what I'm trying to.
If you hadn't heard
Mm.
that body sense,
Yeah.
at the body sense, what is experienced is just hardness, softness, or temperature,
Yeah.
or motion pressure. Would you ever come to that? Would you ever figure that out by yourself?
Through touching only.
But would you, without having heard it? Would it ever?
No.
Right.
Okay.
And
okay.
yeah,
So
would the
is that
idea that
understanding?
consciousness is momentary ever come to you in a lifetime if you hadn't heard, if it hadn't been suggested? So that's why it depends on what one has heard, but the verification of it, because we're not asked just to believe it. It's an explanation of what is right now. So it's there to be verified to the extent possible. And that is my experiencing.
And the questioning is very important because yes, there's touching hardness all day, but no idea that it's hardness. If you ask anyone who's new to a discussion and say what is touch, they'll say a computer or a table, no consideration. And if one says, well, really, are you sure that's touched? And then they begin to pause. Well, what else could it be except a table or a computer? And then one might say, okay, close your eyes. Really, is it a table or computer that's touched? Or is that just thought about? And slowly one begins to appreciate that actually it's just a fantasy that I'm holding the cup or touching the table. So it can be tested out. This is what is meant. It can be proven by understanding what it is that's touched at this moment.
Okay, so understanding could come from seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness. Without that, it's no understanding. Sorry, I'm a bit confused now.
Understanding can understand any reality that has been careful consideration about if it appears, if it is experienced. For example, hardness is experienced now. It can be the beginning of understanding of it. sound that's heard, like we all heard the loud sound, it can be loud or soft, any sound is heard. It's just sound at that moment, just the world of sound. But so quickly the thought about Bluetooth and speakers and what's going wrong, and the story and babies and so on. It is just sound that is heard. Because it appears, there can begin to be the understanding of it. The hearing consciousness is not the object of experience at that moment, so there's the consideration of it, but it can only be known through the mind door. So it's the understanding has to develop. But we learn about different realities. We learn that there is memory, sanya at each moment, marking and remembering what is seen and heard. And that's what conditions the thinking about babies and Bluetooth and speakers because of the memory at each moment. So we learn about different realities, the different kinds of namas that experience an object, and the different rupas like the sound that don't experience anything, to really consider more and more deeply that there really is no self, no thing there. There are just these different dharmas arising and falling away by conditions. As everyone agreed, no one chose to hear that sound. No one had any idea a moment before that a loud sound would be heard. It's by conditions. Whatever arises is by conditions, not by choice, not by selection. It cannot be controlled. And if there's an idea of observing or labeling or selecting or practicing, the sound is long gone by the time there's an idea of observing it or selecting it. So it's like thinking about what has gone. It's not the understanding of what appears now.
Yeah, I'm still confused about no self and non-self. Would you like to
It's just the same.
Same.
Like seeing
So
now.
you're using it different ways.
Seeing, it doesn't matter about the words, but at the moment of seeing, can you see or anyone see? So, you think so? So what is the you that can see?
There's no you.
Is that you seen or heard or tasted or touched or just thought about? Thought about. So no matter what kind of self you call it, it's just an idea. No self, non-self. It's just an idea. So it's only by understanding the dhammas themselves that there can be the understanding of what is meant by no self, non-self.
So how do you deal with the condition that arises? For example, some of us experience adversity that's so big. How do you cope with that?
How do you?
Like war.
How do you? How do you?
How do you?
What is adversity? What is adversity?
When things happening in the world, for example, people going through war, conflict, like currently we
And what about losing loved ones, for example?
Yeah.
And what about having to put up with things we don't like?
something we lost?
Yes. And
We
what
don't
about
expect it to lose it, but
gaining wealth and losing wealth? These are the worldly conditions.
so it comes again, it's conventional truths that we have it in our mind.
They are an inevitable part of life for anyone, including the enlightened being, that they're the ups and downs of life that are inherent in life in samsara. So any idea of dealing with them is in the sense of either stopping them happening or overcoming them somehow is misguided. And the Buddha explained that the only way for them to be dealt with in any long-term sense is the development of understanding, which leads to the ending of actually life is samsara.
And let's just take one example, like what you were beginning to mention. Let's say we thinking about the war on the border between Cambodia and Thailand, and maybe thinking, or Ukraine. But what is the reality now when thinking about Korea, when thinking about Ukraine or Cambodia or Greenland or anywhere? What is the reality now? Is it Ukraine or Greenland or Cambodia, or what is
condition that arises?
What is the condition that is arising now?
No.
War is just the idea, the dream. The reality now is just the thinking. So the world is actually at one moment now, at a moment of hearing. The sound is the world now. Hearing is the world now. At a moment of thinking about Ukraine, the thinking now is the world. And the story about how I became interested in Buddhism or what's going on in Ukraine, is just the story that is thought about. So the Buddha taught the understanding of the world here and now, and how the world crumbles away, falls away at each moment. So we think the problem is Ukraine or the family member or the car or the work situation. But the problem's always here and now. And the real problems in life are the clinging, the ignorance, and the aversion, the defilements at this moment. When opening the newspaper and one's disturbed, the problem is not the newspaper or the story, it's the accumulated tendency, the disturbance on account of the clinging to something else. Yes, it's always here and now. In truth, no Ukraine, no Cambodia,
Nobody.
just seeing now, hearing now, the same worlds that were experienced in the Buddha's time are here and now, no matter whether sitting in a beautiful, quiet pagoda in Vietnam, beautiful plum village center, or here in the middle of town.
We talked earlier about understanding the true nature of life at this moment, and it's the conditioned nature of life that is something that means that these situations you're talking about can never be dealt with. They are there by conditions, and also our reaction to them is by conditions too.
I have one question. Sarah, hi, Jonathan. After I listened to all the speech and all the questions that been asking by my friend and everyone, they've been answered with a lot of answer that which is reasonable, and they require to understand a bit of Dharma so that we understand clearly. So my question is, before starting my question, I just want to say that he was talking about the accumulated tendency. So the accumulated tendency, by my understanding, it will be built up every day without knowing. So all the consciousness that you've been, it's been arise and falling away, all of those will be built up in our life or in this existing plane, all of the things. The point is we have to not we is because of is those realities always there, and whether you understand or not understanding it is always there. So the thing is just everyone or every let's say that everyone need to understand more. Or to build up the wisdom and the understanding of the real condition of Dharma. Yeah, so by understanding all of this, from what I'm studying, is because everyone had dittis, which is the wrong view. So if everyone build up, they still have the wrong view, there's no way they can find a way to understanding the real condition of Dharma. So from your experience, can you share with us about the wrong view? How can everyone understand more that the wrong view is the cause of everyone to understand the real condition of Dharma, which is Paramattha?
Actually, there are a few points in what you say. One is that even if ditthi, wrong view, is not arising now, or even if there are no conditions for aversion now, like there may have been when hearing the loud sound, or even if there's not strong attachment now, the tendencies are there, carried from one moment of consciousness to another. We call them anusyas in Pali. So the unwholesome tendencies are there. There are also wholesome tendencies, asya, anusya. Anusya are the unwholesome tendencies. So even when there is no ditthi arising, maybe because we're reflecting on dhammas now, the tendency, the anusya, anusya, is there, ready to condition wrong view to arise any time. The aversion or anger, the tendency is there, even when we're happy and smiling. So that's why unexpectedly, if there's suddenly the sound of thunder or this loud sound or baby crying, anger can arise unexpectedly because the tendency is lying dormant, ready to condition the akusala, the unwholesome states to arise until it's completely eradicated. So the ditthi is only eradicated at the stage of Sotapanna. After that, no more wrong view. But that's why there has to be a lot of listening, considering, reflecting, because so quickly it's the idea of something seen, something heard. The subtle kinds of attachment and ignorance, including ditthi, in other words, asavas, very subtle degrees arise so quickly after seeing or hearing, long before there's an idea of microphone or baby. The aversion can arise, or the idea of something here. So different degrees of wrong view, very slight, which are very common, or can be strong when there's the idea of I must go and live in a quiet place, otherwise understanding cannot arise. It's strong wrong view conditioning that idea because there's no understanding that dhammas are here and now, anywhere, at this moment. There's the idea that one must follow a practice or one must go to a special place, not understanding about the truth of daily life. And that's why we're quite strong about it in the discussions, because it's dangerous. It leads to wrong view, when the wrong path leads to more and more of the wrong path. Makes one thinks one cannot answer the telephone, one has to cut off from family and people, and life has to be quieter and quieter. So it leads away from understanding daily life. And this is why the Buddha taught a right path and a wrong path. So the understanding can be right or wrong, but it's a bit like if you're traveling to the airport, if you take the wrong turn, it goes more and more wrong. And if you take the right path, it goes in the right direction. But it depends, again, on the interest and the consideration, whether one would like to hear more about the dhammas in life, or whether one would just like to follow the wrong practice, or whether, like a lot of our friends in Sydney, we swim every morning. Friends, they talk about this moment, but may just think life is all about just enjoying oneself, having a good time. So it may not be strong wrong view, but no interest in understanding about realities. So it just depends on the interest.
And I could just add briefly that you mentioned both understanding and wrong view. They are opposites, of course. So as understanding is developed, it counteracts wrong view. By its nature, it straightens out wrong view. So you don't have to think about how to deal with wrong view, because when understanding is developed, understanding of any conditioned reality, not just understanding the wrong view itself, but of any conditioned reality, helps to reduce the wrong view, which is eventually eradicated at the first stage of enlightenment. So this is, I think, a point worth also making and discussing. In the Buddha's teaching, as far as I understand it, he did not teach that there must be attention to the unwholesome mental factors in particular to eradicate them. He didn't teach, for example, that dosa or aversion is only reduced and eradicated by having aversion as the object of awareness and understanding. What he taught was that just the development of any conditioned reality on and on. And as Ajahn Suchin puts it, Panya, that understanding works its way. And by measures, by steps, it helps to reduce and eradicate the various kinds of unwholesome tendencies, stage by stage. So we should not think of wrong view as a particular issue or obstacle to the arising of awareness and understanding. It has to be that awareness and understanding can develop if the factors are there, and it will work its way.
If we hear and consider more about different dharmas, how they're conditioned, then that is the way that wrong view will gradually be reduced.
Yes, can I just ask more regarding to this question? Like you said, there's no teaching for akusala dharma, but it's been accumulating our consciousness already. You said Ajahn Suchin always mentioned that as long as understanding arises, then all the akusala dharma it will gradually eradicate.
It wasn't quite, there's no teaching about kusala. The Buddha taught about all kinds of dharma, seeing, what is seeing, hearing, sound, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, kindness, annoyance, just kusala, akusala, all kinds of dharmas.
So it means every consciousness, whether kusala or akusala, it's always arise and falling away by their conditions.
Yes, and the main point is it's not my or your kusala or akusala. Like someone gets angry and they think that it was my anger, or there's kindness and there's clinging to my kindness. They're just dharmas arising and falling away by conditions. Yeah. So the understanding has to understand whatever appears, any dharma, not selecting a particular one.
Yes, my question is whether how do one know that wisdom they arise?
I and you don't know, but wisdom, the nature of Panya, is ignorance. Yes. So we don't know. It's Panya that knows. Right. Panya understands. Otherwise, it's not Panya. And in the beginning, it may be so little that afterwards there may be doubt or no idea. But as it begins to develop, then less doubt, more confidence.
Now just relate to our daily life living. For a group of us, of course, because we've been hearing about Dharma, then we start to study Dharma. then you start to realize, oh, how important is that. But let's say someone else, they never hear about Dharma. How do they know that's a right understanding or wrong view? No way to know.
That's the point we discussed earlier. If one doesn't have the good fortune to meet other people who are also interested in the Dhamma, then on one's own, one will never be able to develop understanding. I just want to make one other comment on the question of the development of understanding and dealing with, and not dealing with, but the effect it has. You asked how it can be known that understanding has been developed.
Yep.
And as Sarah said, only understanding itself can know that. But I think it's likely that for most of us, there are moments, like in this discussion, there may be some moments of actual understanding as we consider what's being said, but they're quite weak and not apparent. So the actual moments of understanding may not be known as and when they occur, but over a period of time, it can become apparent that there is a better understanding in general of life at this moment, what life at this moment is, its conditioned nature, in fact that it's things are arising and are obviously happening that are not under our control, under one's own control, and so forth. And for example, that what is being experienced through the eye door is completely different from what's being experienced through the ear door. Different kinds of consciousness, different objects. So there can be, over a period of time, it can be apparent that one's appreciation of the sort of things the Buddha spoke about are, as he said, not because one has repeated it over and over and tried to inculcate it into one's belief. No, that is not the development of understanding.
The brief comment I was going to make is, of course, the nature of wrong view is that it thinks it's right. So for the one who's never heard the Buddha's teachings, they're convinced this is a cup that's seen, and that wrong view is sure that it's right, but actually it's not, because never hearing and considering the truth. So the more understanding, the more ignorance and wrong view is revealed little by little. So it's really like the development of understanding of ignorance and wrong understanding.
My last question. Talking about the right understanding of the reality as they are, it is the level of Panya that experience the reality in the level of Padipati. It is not just the theoretical understanding. In the commentary of Satipatthana Sutta, said the four Satipatthana arise because of Yoniso Manasikara. Without Yoniso Manasikara, there is no any right understanding. So my question is, what is the characteristic of Yoniso Manasikara? Because there are three kinds of Manasikara. The first is Viti Padipataka Manasikara, Manothera, Kiriya Manothera. The second is Javana Padipataka Manasikara, Manothera Vajana, and the last is Manasikara Kitisika. So which one is the Yoniso Manasikara? Before Sarah gives a more detailed answer, can I say, does Manasikara itself ever appear to be known? As the object of, it can be the object to know. Give an example. By the thought. Thinking about Manasikara is not knowing it.
Just thinking about
Yeah, thinking about it.
it. Can it be the object of awareness and understanding? I think the answer is probably
yeah, it is the truth that
Yeah.
it can be experienced, but if the level of satipatthana, not only through thinking, because it's very, yeah, it is nama.
So at a moment of awareness and understanding, there is manasikara, there is universal manasikara, but it doesn't appear. If anything appears apart from the object of the awareness and understanding, it will be the fact that we understand it. And understanding is not the same as manasikara, but they are both necessary for that moment.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can go into the detail of the different kinds of manasikara. Actually, there's only one kind of manasikara, but it can be considered in 3 different ways. But manasikara is the same in whatever, with whatever moment of consciousness it arises.
But
It
some
has the same characteristic.
Yeah, like when you give the other examples referring to the manasikara that arises with the first citta in the sense door process, or the manasikara that arises with the manadvara vajana before kusala or akusala cittas. But when we're talking about yoniso manasikara, we're talking about the kusala manasikara. Usually, like in this context, it's referring to manasikara, the cetasika that arises with understanding. So at moments of kusala, when it is wise attending with right understanding of the object of direct understanding. So without anya, without right understanding, that yoniso manasikara cannot arise. They condition each other. It supports the understanding at that moment.
can I say yoniso manasikara is always kusala? Not
Always kusala. If it's akusala, it's yoniso manasikara. So yoniso manasikara always refers to kusala manasikara, and in most contexts with understanding. Like this, it's with understanding. So there is attending to the object. Manasikara arises with every citta. And when it attends with kusala cittas, it attends wisely. That's all. It's right attention, usually with understanding.
one more. Can it arise with maha kusala jnana vipayutta or always with panya?
It can arise with kusala cittas without panya, but in most, so it arises with any kusala cittas, because there must be manasikara, and it's yoniso, not ayoniso manasikara. In most contexts, in most sutras, it's referring to manasikara with kusala, with jnana, with panya. You're very wide.
Very grateful to be listening to the sharing and the wonderful questions, more questions. So until this moment, I think listening to Dharma is always crucial to myself, because as we have learned about the teachings of the Buddha, always begin with listening to Dharma, with the correct listening and correct attention to Dharma. Because without the factor of listening to Dharma, we cannot have the right understanding, because right understanding the conditions. And without condition, which is listening to Dharma, there's no way that we can practice. As we always want to practice, we have to use the word practice. Practice correctly. And to practice correctly doesn't mean we have to do any particular methods that have been set out. But through the right understanding, we slowly give us the right practice in quotation mark at every moment. And that means you don't have to wait for a particular moment like I did in the past. Like I have to wait for the end of the year in order to be somewhere, in order to see Dharma. But Dharma is actually right here and now. The moment we have aversion, that is the chance for us to cultivate right understanding. The next moment, even the kusala, is also the moment for right understanding. And that is what we're doing here is actually the kind of the starting point, but also the kind of continuous moments of cultivating the right understanding through listening to Dharma. So for myself, I continue to listen to the right Dharma, and that is the kind of the process that the Buddha wants us to be in the middle path, not leading to any extremes, as to get indulgent in the 5 sensual desires or try to have a set tone practices. And sometimes if we don't have the right understanding about the Dharma and the things happening right here and now through the senses, then we often torture ourselves in the way that we want the practice to be our way. Yeah, but it's actually in the wrong, follow the wrong view, because we accidentally cultivate more wrong view about an I or a my doing the practice. So thank you very much for today's sharing.
Thank you for those remarks, and I certainly agree about the danger of wrong view. This is actually a danger of any kind of practice, because if one has an idea of practicing and it is not the natural arising of awareness and understanding, and it's on that sense, I just am wondering about your reference to cultivating, because you said if aversion arises, it's an opportunity to cultivate right understanding. And that to me is something that, and you also mentioned moment to moment awareness, or if I understood you correctly. So is this the same though as awareness and understanding that arises just by its own conditions occasionally, and takes an object that is not one that necessarily we have chosen or noticed? Of course, there cannot be awareness of aversion unless it is arising at the present moment. But it doesn't mean that because we have aversion that is the appropriate object for awareness and understanding at that moment, because there are many other realities also. There's still seeing and hearing and thinking and experiences through the body sense and so forth. Now, so the question of what reality will be the object of awareness and understanding is one that cannot be decided by the individual. So this is where I think if one considers carefully the 4 factors mentioned by the Buddha that you would be familiar with and that came up earlier, of association with a good friend, hearing true Dharma, wise consideration, which is not necessarily in this context just the middle factor, because I think it refers to reflection on what has been heard, and finally practice. How does cultivating understanding fit in with those 4 factors? Because to me it suggests more a directed an idea of something that's directed to happen or occur than what happens naturally.
Yes, just the last comment, because I think it's time for us to wind up.
the clinging is so crafty, even when we think that we're not following a practice anymore. There can still be the kind of remnants, the subtle clinging to being aware of an object that appears now, like aversion, or so it's a subtle kind of selecting that can come in because clinging is so crafty. Or even when we study the details and the terms, and Leanne's familiar with this from our Zooms, and try to get the right definitions. Clinging can come in even at those times. So clinging is so very common, even when studying the Dharma, even when catching the meaning. What about what appears now? Yes, anytime. So it's not just those out there who follow the practice. It's the here and now, clinging to getting the meaning, getting the definition, finding the term, or being aware of what is now very crafty. So I think we're going to wind up now, but it's a really wonderful opportunity for us. We're so glad to meet everyone, and we hope that all or most of you can come on Wednesday, yes, morning or afternoon or all day, yes. I know morning may be difficult for you, but perhaps in the afternoon, yes.